funniest thing about that is every time I speak to someone who's been on radio, particularly if the company you're in, you're in the company bubble. Like you won't talk to ARN or SCA or vice versa.
But also you're in a company bubble and every company is rating number one.
Yeah.
They're all number one. But radio is so ridiculous. It's just so dumb. And the thing is, I mean, this probably comes from a bitter place as well. I just feel like they don't realise, they have to realise that they're dying. But when I was there, I could see it. I'm like, you're not embracing Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. You're not investing in these new platforms, and they compete with you. Radio does not sit above Facebook or TikTok. Like, if anything, they're now above radio. People don't go to radio for anything, in my mind. You don't go for new music or news like you used to. You're really only listening to it when you're in the car because it's all you've got. But now with, fancier cars, I've got Apple Play and I listen to Spotify. Like, I don't actually consume radio through radio. I consume radio through Carrie and Tommy through their Instagram, Jason PJ through their TikTok, Kyle and Jack through their TikTok and Facebook. Like, I'm not listening to radio. I'm still watching it, which is weird. And I think a lot of people are, like, a lot of Jason PJ are just kill it on social media, but it doesn't translate into radio ratings. And I think a lot of these big media companies, TV, mostly just TV and radio, use social media as a marketing tool. They don't use it as a platform to create unique content. And I don't think they ever will. And by the time, they hire people that understand how to use these social platforms, it'll be too late.
Yeah, the problem is that they suffer from it's not the innovator's dilemma, it's the incumbent's dilemma, where they've been innovated, so people now no longer have to invest in all this infrastructure. And the best case I've actually seen of this was a recent guest. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ticker News or Ticker TV or Ausbiz TV.
Yes, yeah. I have.
So Aaron Young used to run Sky News business in Melbourne. So they were shutting it down. They obviously had told him, and he realized, well, fuck, I can do this like on my own. And so he starts it, he tests it out. The first year or so is just blood, sweat, and tears working it out. But now you go into his office, and that was probably the most enlightening experiences. So I interviewed him. A week later, I go in to talk about TikTok for one of their segments. And you just look at their infrastructure versus a network. Having been into a network or a radio station for talent work, it is like equipment. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like millions and millions of dollars worth of stuff.
Well, that panel, that is $750,000 each one of those. It's
ridiculous.
Use.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
And there's 2, 4, 6, 8. There's maybe 10 in the SCA building.
Jesus,
That's just $5 million. Yeah,
it's just insane. And then I go on a Ticker, and so their broadcasting system is unreal. It's like it's so. I don't know. There's something about it. I remember my producer was just frothing because they have he was like, dude, this is unreal. This is what we're going to do when we move into the studio. And the thing is that Ticker's setup isn't crazy. It's just like a black magic deck. They've got 2 guys sitting there, one that does manages the bookings, one that is literally doing the live stuff. We've got a lady in a booth doing the news, a lady in Sydney doing extended segments, and then a main studio for deep interviews, and it's all in this space in Richmond. And I'm like, holy fuck, this is a multi-million-dollar business, and their infrastructure costs are just nothing. Like Channel 9 and all that, they're stuffed. They're in trouble. They're in real big trouble when these businesses get more capital and scale to them.
It's just so hard because they're all run, and their board is older men who were managing the stations back in the heyday when they, probably doing lines of coke off strippers' belly buttons. They were making so much money in television, and they're like, but why are people not investing in TV? Or maybe it's because we're not. There's just so many things, and the thing that I often realised now that I left the bubble is that rating survey in radio.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, but there's also a crucial element missing, and that is the percentage of people who aren't listening. So the 100% of the audience is if 100% of Australians were listening. It's that sample size, like 20 people, you knock on a door. Do you listen to radio? No. Okay, well, I'll go to the next house. Do you listen to radio? No. Okay, well, I'll go to the next one. And then, oh, yes, you do. Can you fill out this book? And they only give that book to the person who listens. And so there's no calculation of people who aren't listening. So it's always going to be 100%. Like, it's always going to be, and you can't see the trend. There is a trend happening, and how do you, and they're hemorrhaging money, and someone said it.
I was going to say the surveys that you spoke about on Luke and Lewis's podcast was really interesting. I just want you to maybe touch on how it's actually done for people, because I don't think people really understand.
Oh, yeah. So radio surveys are physical books you have to tick. I've done them a few times. When I was in high school, we got randomly selected, which is very rare. And so we got individual 6 books, a book per person. And it's basically an Excel spreadsheet of a book with all the radio stations listed and all these times from midnight to like 11:59 p.m. every day. And you just tick these boxes of when you were listening and who you were listening to. And that is it. Then at the end of I think it's 2 weeks, they come back and they collect the book, and then they tally that up, and then they spit out these results of what radio stations are doing what. Now, it's only a handful of Australians getting these books, and then it's just times by the certain amount of population, and that's how they get the numbers. So it's a really, really dodgy system, but there is just nothing to reflect someone who isn't listening. They just ignore the results of people who aren't listening. It's weird when you see there's a thing called CUME, which is the cumulative amount of people who are listening, which they boast like there's 1 million listeners this week. We have 1 million people listening, unique individuals listening. And that number has steadily remained the same over the course of the last, 10 to 12 years. It's gone up because of population, but the radio people sit there and go, well, we're clearly not losing listeners. One in, you look at like Carl and Jack, apparently one in, I don't know, they rate really well, 1 in 10 people listen to Kyle and Jackie O. I mean, it might be for them because they're such a hero station, but like, you just go, are they though?
So so you think that it's totally unrealistic because the way that it's
totally unrealistic. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not a professional and I don't work for GMK or whatever. And I'm also cynical and I hate radio, and I really want them to understand how much money and how much power and how easy it is to get onto socials and do things that way. That I could just come across as jaded. But someone also said to me something really like not profound, pretty profound. All these new media is coming in, right? And when you look like Netflix launches and everyone invests they throw their money at Netflix. They don't care if it makes a loss because, they're in it for the long term. And so they're not expecting, their shareholders are not expecting a return because they're in it for the long haul. Radio, their shareholders need a return because radio was made so long ago. And so every year with less and less money coming in, they're making redundancies after redundancies. They're downsizing. And it's just a spiral of them going, how do we make more money? Like, how do we return this money to the shareholders or to whoever? How do we keep making a profit? And they're just shrinking. And even being in some of the Sydney offices and even in ARN, and you just go in there and you're like, why would you spend millions of dollars on all these new desks and computer equipment? And like, you fired everyone, and they've got all these beautiful TVs on the wall and they've got all these things going on and like refurbishments happening. And I'm like, ugh, do you not see what's happening? And
the thing as well is what's crazy is the amount of debt these companies carry, these holding companies, SCA, ARN, etc. It's really interesting. Yeah, they carry a lot. Like they've got these massive credit lines. I think SCA's got $200 million of those. Something like that. To
who?
To the banks. Yeah.
That's not great.
No, it's not good. Yeah, you should read the financial reports. It's the same thing that's happened in sort of the agency land, like the area that I've gotten into. If you look at all the holding companies, like your big fours, like WPP, they're all just debt-laden zombies. It's the same thing because all the platforms have just holed them out. So, there's going to come a time, I reckon, where maybe a decade from now, a lot of these large businesses will just collapse, and then there'll be there's going to be more opportunity than there is now, I think, because there'll just be a whole bunch of talent that are just let loose.
Well, I'm also seeing a lot of the talent in radio and on TV they realize, and they're like, I see like the Channel 9 guys all over TikTok, they're doing that. They've got their own profiles, they're doing all these own things, and they're doing really good at it. And so you can sort of see that they're like, well, the ship's sinking. Better look over here, better sort of diversify my audience.